Hi again and welcome to another IPD Tech session. Today we'll be removing the instrument cluster from this 240 to replace the dash lights and also to repair the broken odometer. We'll start by removing the instrument cluster from the dashboard. Let's start by removing the light switch knob and the dimmer knob by pulling them straight back and using a small flat blade screwdriver, gently pry the cover forward and position it out of the way. We can now take the two Phillips head screws out that hold the bracket in position. And pull the bracket out of its spot. On the right side of the instrument cluster, take off the two covers next to it by inserting a small flat blade and prying gently until they come free. And remove the two Phillips heads holding the instrument cluster in place. Pull the instrument cluster as far up as you can until you can get a good look at the electrical connectors behind it. Use a pen and paper if necessary and make the notations as to which and where each connector goes. Some vehicles using a tachometer will have one extra wire toward the left side of the instrument cluster. With all of our electrical connectors disconnected, we can now remove the instrument cluster from the dash. Alright, with the instrument cluster out of the car, we'll proceed to the bench and get ready to take out the speedometer and odometer assembly. Before going any further, let's take a moment to talk about dash light bulb replacement and both the instrument clusters found in these models. We have both the mechanically driven and electrically driven speedometers here from each instrument cluster. While you have them out, it's a good idea to replace the backlighting bulbs of the dash lights. They're located on the tops of the cluster, and to remove them, twist the bulb holder 90 degrees and pull it straight out. You can then replace the bulb, put a new one into the holder, and install it back into the cluster. We also have the directional indicators and warning lights here as well if we need to replace them. We'll begin disassembling the speedometer and odometer assembly by removing it from the cluster itself. To do this, take out the 7 screws that hold the assembly in place. To remove the speedometer and odometer assembly from the instrument cluster, turn it around to the back side and remove the 4 Phillips heads that are holding it in place. With the speedometer odometer assembly out of the car, locate the drive on the side of the assembly and remove the 2 Phillips heads from it. Lift up the plate and you can take the old drive assembly and gear off. You can see the original gear on the right is very soft and pliable, basically a rubber piece, where the new IPD gear on the left is a hard plastic and will provide a much longer lifespan. If the plate the gear rides on seems a bit dry, put a little dab of Vaseline on it and install the new IPD gear. Note the black gear on the back of the plate and the two black gears inside the odometer assembly. These need to mesh together when it's inserted. You may have to wiggle it a bit to get it to sit in just right. Once it's in, take the top plate and drive, line up the center shaft and the center hole, and put it into position. Take your Phillips head screws, insert them in the drive motor, and tighten them down. Before reinstalling the speedometer-odometer assembly back into the instrument cluster, note the 3 pins and the 3 sockets that need to fit together. Some models will also have a 4th pin and 4th socket that need to go in together as well. Holding the instrument cluster and speedometer together, rotate it around and install the 4 screws that secure it. Reinstall the instrument cluster back into its housing. Be sure to align the service light reset button, if it has one, the trip reset button, and the clock adjustment knob. And reinstall the screws that hold it in place. And now let's put the cluster back into the dashboard. Reinstall the instrument cluster back into the dash and reconnect all of the electrical connectors you took apart. With all of your electrical connectors reconnected, push the instrument cluster back into the dashboard. And reinstall the 2 Phillips heads on each side. And reinstall your side covers. Reinstall the light switch and dimmer bracket and the 2 Phillips heads that secure it. And reinstall the cover plate. And finally install the switch knobs. If you're running into trouble, you can always call us at 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at 800-444-6473. And thanks for joining us on this IPD Tech session.